She had power, wealth, and fame until a tragic accident left her paralyzed and alone. Then a barefoot boy appeared at her gate with nothing but a strange offer. "I'll heal you for your leftovers." She laughed. But what happened next defied logic, science, and everything she believed about healing, hope, and human connection. You won't believe how one forgotten child rewrote her fate. She laughed at his offer to heal her until she stood up and walked. She had it all: money, power, celebrity. Her name, Victoria Donane. At 30, she was on the cover of Forbes and elsold as a genius in the tech world, a brutal businesswoman who could warp markets to do her bidding and annihilate her competitors without even getting wet. She wasn't merely wealthy, she was invulnerable. But on one rainy evening, everything shifted. One wrong turn, 1 second too late, a crash that silenced her body and her soul. The doctors told her the brutal truth. Her spinal cord was done. She would never walk again. No amount of therapy, no amount of wealth could undo what had been broken. Her legs didn't just stop moving, they stopped existing in her life. And slowly, so did everything else. The so-called friends who were hailing her triumph vanished. The investors who were declaring her a visionary, gone. The tech queen headlines were replaced with silence, alone in her grand house behind gates that were designed to lock out the world. Victoria descended into something more sinister than pain: emptiness. She did everything, hired the best physical therapists, brought in specialists, tried holistic therapy, robotic exoskeletons, alternative meds. Nothing helped. Nothing even budged. Then, one morning, he was there, a boy, perhaps 10, barefoot, dirty knees, holding a plastic bag of bruised fruit and half-eaten sandwiches in his hand. He was standing at the border of her estate, beyond all the gates and guards, and staring at her straight in the eye. "You can't walk," he said, so calm and sure, "but I think I can mend you." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think you can cure me?" He didn't blink, just smiled. "I'll do it, if you give me your leftovers." She came close to dismissing him, but something stayed her. He had no license, no tools, no name anyone would know, only his hands and eyes that seemed to see more than any doctor ever had. For reasons she couldn't fathom, Victoria agreed, and what ensued was something even her millions couldn't purchase. His name was Micah. He was there every day, no fuss, no commitment, no threat. He didn't take her for a patient, he didn't probe or push. He just touched her feet, her calves, her legs, softly, respectfully, as if he were listening through his fingertips, and gradually, she began to feel something. A spasm in her toe, goosebumps, heat, things she hadn't experienced in years. But the true miracle wasn't physical, it was divine. Between his silent moments, Micah inquired of her things no therapist ever had. "Do you still want to live? What were you like before the money? Do you ever forgive yourself?" He wasn't simply touching her nerves, he was touching the woman hidden behind the trauma, the girl prior to ambition, the soul hidden under armor. And then, one afternoon, it did. He touched the back of her leg and it moved. She screamed. He just smiled. "Told you," he whispered. "You're not broken, just forgotten." Victoria didn't know who this boy really was or how he knew what he knew, so she asked him, and the story he told was more extraordinary than anything she'd ever heard. Micah had been doing this for years, not in hospitals, not for celebrities, but quietly, modestly for those with nothing. His mother, dying of cancer when he was 6, couldn't pay for doctors. So he sat with her, holding hands, massaging her feet, singing lullabies. She said his touch eradicated the pain. And then there was the pastor with a sore back, the fibromyalgia woman, the war veteran who'd slept poorly in years. Each of them said the same thing: he doesn't heal your body first. He touches something deeper. Victoria, the greatest skeptic, found herself believing, not in magic, but in Micah, in what he awakened within her, in what he reminded her she still was. And then, one morning, she stood, with hands shaking on the armrest of her living room and tears streaming uncontrolled. Victoria Dane, spinal cord billionaire, stood up. It should have been over, but the universe was not done yet. A security camera recorded it, her limping toward the boy in her backyard, one hesitant step at a time. The footage leaked onto the internet, and the world went mad. Some people said it was staged, others said it was miraculous. But one thing was certain: the woman who was never to walk again was walking. The headlines came back: "Paralyzed millionaire walks again." Thanks to mystery boy from the streets, television crews descended. News stations pleaded for interviews. Victoria gave just one. With Micah at her side, taking her hand, she turned to the camera and said, "I lost everything when I was paralyzed, but this boy gave me something I never had, not just movement, but meaning." Then she did something nobody predicted. She began a foundation, Hands of Hope, a title in Micah's honor. Its purpose: to search for others like him. Children who heal with connection, empaths who were never given the opportunity, street healers, lost children, soft-hearted souls the world passed by. Today, Victoria walks again, stronger than ever, and Micah, he still bartered healing for scraps. but only with those who need him most. He never craved wealth, never begged for cameras. All he ever wanted was to remind the world. Sometimes the poorest among us carry the richest gifts. You can't walk, but I think I can fix you. The words were spoken so quietly, so simply, the woman barely heard them at all. She squinted against the blinding afternoon sunlight pouring down the front steps of her mansion, her hands clenching a bit tighter around the armrests of her designer motorized wheelchair. There, just past the tall black gate that stood between her and the rest of humanity, was a boy barefoot, probably 10 years old, probably younger, with skin the dark blue-black color of night and eyes far too somber for one so young. His shirt was ripped around the shoulder, his shorts oversized, and in his hand he held a grease-stained plastic supermarket bag filled to bursting with what appeared to be battered fruit half-munched sandwiches and soggy bits of wilted lettuce rummaged from a dumpster down the street. He didn't belong here. Not on her property, not on this side of the globe. Her compound, gated, patrolled, off limits, hadn't had a visitor in close to a year. Not since the crash, not since her life became a hospital bed and newspaper headlines. Yet here he stood, his feet on her gravel driveway, as if he'd merely strolled into Eden, as if the 7-foot fences and security cameras and serious-looking guards didn't exist at all. He cocked his head at her, his voice still firm. "I'll do it, if you'll give me your leftovers." The ridiculousness smacked her in the face. She laughed, bitter, hard, the kind of laughter a person makes when they're more shattered than amused. "You think you can fix me?" Her voice had a bitter bite, not because she was trying to wound him, but because she'd been toughened up by months of suited strangers who preached repair and left her in worse shape than they'd found her. Physical therapists, test surgeons, new age mystics, none had succeeded. None had even come close. And now this child, this dirty, starving little creature, had the temerity to propose a cure for scraps off her plate. It was both ridiculous and insulting, but the boy didn't move, didn't back off, didn't blink. He merely smiled, a gentle, odd smile, not arrogant or cocky, but old, as if he were recalling something the world had long since forgotten. And for an instant, just one, his smile eroded something within her. The woman Victoria, Dane once infamous for her chain of tech startups and cold business acumen, now silenced and covered in bed sores, regarded him with the look of someone attempting to look through a mist. What did he know? What was he so certain of? She should have picked up the phone and summoned security, told him to leave, to desist from wasting her time. But something held her back. Something in her, something that had lain dormant for months, whispered, "Let him talk." The silk of her robe fluttered softly in the breeze. Somewhere far away, the putt-putt of a gardener's leaf blower droned like static noise. But between them, her, a woman who had once bowed the world to her whims, and him, a boy who seemed like he hadn't eaten properly in days, there lay only silence. He did not shatter it, he left it to her. She examined his features. No cruelty, no avarice. Only a silent assurance, as if he recognized she required something more than medication, as if he had known pain before, raw pain, and wasn't afraid. She glanced at her lifeless legs, covered up in a blanket of luxury cashmere, then back at the boy. "What's your name?" she asked at last. "Micah, where are you from?" "Doesn't matter," he replied briefly. "I'm here now." Victoria took a deep breath. She hadn't allowed anyone to touch her for months, not without gloves, not without forms. This was crazy, but perhaps insanity was the only sane thing left. Her voice was softer now. "Leftovers, that's what you want." "Yeah," he nodded. "Just the leftovers nobody else wants, and your trust. A little of it." Portion of her ached to weep, and she hadn't wept since the day they informed her the nerves were lost, that her spine would never support her anymore. Another part of her wished to shriek at the heavens, at herself, at the harsh joke of having so much only to lose it all on one rainy night in a hard corner. But most of her, for some reason, just wanted to believe. "Fine," she said, finally backing up in her chair to open the gate with the remote taped under her blanket. Undefined, her voice cracked a little, revealing something she didn't want him to know. "Undefined, you want leftovers? Then demonstrate what those hands are capable of." And as the boy walked onto her land, beyond the gates and towards the stone steps that led up to the front porch where she waited, neither of them had any idea that something very special had just been initiated. Her name was Victoria. Dane? Cutting like glass, lovely like fire, and once as relentless as a tidal wave. A tech billionaire born from scratch, who had created her empire out of a small basement flat and a hand-me-down computer. Victoria had dominated the startup world with the precision of a surgeon and the ferocity of a lion. Before she turned 30, Forbes dubbed her the next female titan. Venture capitalists were fighting to fund her concepts. Her apps made mental health monitoring revolutionary. Her software was snapped up by multinational companies. She was not only famous for her creativity, but for her intensity. Ruthless in the boardroom, charming on podiums, and totally in charge. Until the crash. It was raining on the evening of the accident, and she was by herself, returning from a speaking engagement that had made headlines for her ruthless destruction of a rival. Her heels were kicked out on the passenger seat. Her phone rang, constantly with congratulations. And her mind was already ahead to the next big deal. One bad turn, one sharp bend, one moment too late, the twist of metal, the crash of glass, and then nothing. When she came to, she couldn't feel her legs, couldn't even wiggle her toes. The doctors gave her the bad news with empty eyes and rehearsed sympathy. Total spinal cord damage, no motor function below the waistline, irreversible for the first time in her life. Victoria had no fix, no power. She didn't weep, at least not at first. She planned. Chose the finest doctors, brought in experimental neurologists, prescribed every therapy and technology money could purchase, converted her mansion into a medical fortress, robotic legs, acupuncture, deep nerve stimulation, biofeedback, hypnosis. Nothing worked. Her spine was quiet, her legs still. She started disappearing, first from the media, then from her peers, and finally from the people who once vowed they'd never abandon her. The friends who had toasted champagne on her rooftop now ignored her messages. Her most committed investors withdrew. Her mailbox withered. Her businesses were stealthily acquired by boards who described it as a gracious transition. In the high walls of her mansion, Victoria, Dane, once a figure of contemporary power, started to shrink. Days merged into days. Nurses rotated in and out. Therapists attempted, then departed. Her smile began to flee. Her ambition disappeared. What was the use of being genius if the body failed you? What was the use of power if you couldn't even stand? Isolation her shadow, resentment her new vocabulary. And then he came. A boy out of the blue, standing at the border of her immaculate lawn with dirt on his knees, scraped elbows and eyes which held something she hadn't seen in anyone in years. He wasn't selling anything, didn't arrive with a resume or a miracle machine. He arrived with his hands. And an offer, I'll try to repair you if you provide me with your leftovers. Leftovers. That word stung like a bad joke. She was accustomed to writing checks for 7 figures. Now she was being presented with healing in return for chili leftovers in her fridge. Her instinct was to laugh. But when she gazed into his face, something cautioned her that this was no trick. He wasn't laughing at her. He wasn't scared of her. Either she had wealth. He had something different, something old, something her universe. The universe of machines, power, velocity, and efficiency had lost sight of. Something warm. She did not believe in miracles, no longer, but she believed in patterns, and something in the pattern of her failures, the precise timing of each expert resigning, every machine breaking down, every plan falling apart, felt like it was all building toward this. Like the universe had tried every remedy but the one barefoot in front of her. Was it possible that healing would not be from a laboratory, but from a child? She reminded herself that she had nothing left to lose, but in reality, she had one thing left, the precious hope that life might still be surprising. And so she gazed at him, this odd, quiet boy who arrived with nothing but questions and a scrunched-up grocery bag, and spoke the words no one had any reason to expect from her anymore. Fine, you want leftovers. Show me what you've got. And just like that, Victoria Dane, once the queen of cold logic, let in the most illogical thing of all, a boy who believed she could be whole again. He came every day without fail. No uniform, no ID tag, no diploma. In glass. Just him, shoeless or in tattered sandals. His tiny hands with nothing but a crumpled napkin of stale bread or a ripe piece of fruit she'd left on the door last night. No appointment, no agenda, no fee per hour. He came with the sun, occasionally humming softly, occasionally in silence, but always in that same peaceful demeanor, as if the world itself stopped spinning when he entered her home. She fought it at first. She didn't overtly resist. She wouldn't ever be that obvious, but her body braced when he moved closer, her muscles flinching away from contact, as she did since the crash. But Micah didn't push. He waited. When she was prepared, he started with the easiest, her feet. He knelt at her side, arranged a soft towel under her legs, and set his small hands on the tops of her bare feet, not in a medical sense, not clinical or professional, but as if he were hearing, really hearing, as if, under her skin, beyond the shattered nerves and worn-out wires, there was a language he could speak, and she had forgotten how to speak. All contact was slow, deliberate, intensely purposeful. It wasn't a massage, it wasn't therapy, it was something else, like reverence, like stillness in action. Victoria, who was a woman who scoffed at anything unproven or without measures, was left shocked at how deep what she felt was. Not right away, but over time. The first thing she realized was that there was a tiny prickling so small she wondered if she had fantasized it. then a warmness, a burning that returned gently to a frozen spot. Goosebumps crept down her legs. Her breath caught up in amazement, and she resented how much she wished to believe it was true. Could a kid accomplish something science could not? Could these tiny, battered up hands truly bring back a body that had been certified dead from the waist down? She would have mocked herself if the situation weren't so grave, but the boy, who was named Micah, never bragged, never pushed, never took credit. He did not visit to heal her ego. He visited to touch what no one else had been brave enough to, touch her spirit. Between appointments, he would ask questions that no trained therapist had ever dared to ask, not about symptoms or surgery or background, but about her. The her that existed before the headlines, before the penthouses and private jets. Do you still want to live? He asked one morning, his palms hovering just above her ankles. She went numb. No one had ever spoken the words out loud. How was it before you had all that money? He whispered one day, drawing a light circle on her knee, her throat constricted. She didn't even know anymore. Another day, while digging his fingers into the muscle at the back of her calf, he just said, "Do you ever forgive yourself?" And that shattered her. She faced away from him, her eyes burning with something she hadn't let in months. Tears emerged without invitation, anger, shame, all of it. She didn't know if she wanted to scream or cry, but Micah didn't attempt to halt either. He simply kept his hands firm, as if he were cupping more than flesh. More than flesh was what they were cupping, actually, as if they were cupping space for her pain. And then, on a gray Thursday afternoon, when the light inside her living room was pale and muted, it occurred. He was kneeling as usual, pushing into a spot on her calf that she hadn't known in years, when suddenly her leg barely moved. A spasm, a shiver, a spark of life. She gasped, then shrieked. The sound resonated through the corridors, through the floor to ceiling. Glass windows, through the marble on her formerly quiet mansion. Her eyes sprang open wide, hands shaking on the arms of her wheelchair. "Micah," she whispered, voice trembling. My leg just moved." She stared down as if it would disappear again, as if she dreamed it, but it had occurred. It had happened. Micah looked up, smiling softly, eyes shining not with triumph, but with quiet knowing. "Told you," he said gently, wiping his hands on a small cloth she'd given him days earlier. "You're not broken, just forgotten." And in that moment, Victoria realized that what this boy was restoring wasn't just nerve endings or muscles, it was her belief in possibility, in connection, in the mysterious and the sacred. He wasn't mending her body by himself. He was reaching the pain she hid beneath metal, the young girl she used to be, and the woman she could still be. In the silence after her leg had first responded, Victoria couldn't help but think about the boy, not what he'd done, but who he was. Mind long engrossed in data and strategy now shifted toward the inexplicable. Why could a child with no degree, no licensure, no training, touch her in ways the most advanced doctors hadn't the second time he visited? She did not allow him to simply begin. Seek 2 corner of the digital universe, from Twitter to TikTok to cable, TV, the air was filled with one thing. Was it real? Others said it was a hoax, a skillfully orchestrated PR stunt to resuscitate her public persona. Others attributed it to divine intervention. Some cried medical fraud, clamoring for scientific explanations and retests. But most were just amazed. The headlines gushed like movie billboards. Paralyzed millionaire walks again, healed by a mystery boy from the streets. Meet the kid who did what medicine couldn't, from wheelchair to walking. The touch that changed everything. TV crews besieged the gates of her mansion. Paparazzi swarmed outside. Talk shows sent presents and pleaded for exclusives. But Victoria remained quiet until one morning she came out hand in hand with Micah and agreed to talk. Only once. One camera. One interview. No script. No lights. Only the truth. They sat on the garden bench together, the same bench where she first laughed at him, her hair back, no makeup, no branding, only the version of her that few people had ever seen. She stared straight into the lens and said quietly, "I lost everything when I was paralyzed, my body, my ambition, my identity. I possessed money, but lacked meaning, friends, but no faith, power, but no serenity. And then this boy enters my life, not with a miracle solution. Not with magic, but with presence. He touched me in parts nobody else even tried. He restored to me not merely my movement, but something I never had. He restored to me myself." The world watched in silence, not because of what she told him, but because of who was standing next to her. Micah, barefoot and in a faded but clean shirt, smiled gently and gave no words. He did not seek attention. He did not require it. He was never in this for the glory. When questioned on whether he was a healer, he merely replied, "Sometimes people forget how to feel. I just help them remember." And the matter was settled. No fame tour, no endorsements, no podcast gigs. Victoria attempted to provide him with a home. He wouldn't allow it. Tried to show him money. He refused. He just requested that the leftover food continue to be left by the door for whoever might need it. But Victoria couldn't just be healed. She understood that there were more of him, boys and girls possessing gifts no one had time for. Kids who'd been raised with pain, who'd survived without books, but had wisdom in their fingers and compassion in their marrow. So she began a foundation in his name, Hands of Hope. Its purpose wasn't to supplant advanced medicine, but to broaden the concept of healing. It taught caregivers how to hear, not how to diagnose, how to look at the poor, the talented, the overlooked. It awarded scholarships to shelter children who demonstrated intuition that couldn't be learned. It took teams into neighborhoods and found healing, touch individuals, empaths, intuitives, emotional whisperers, and instructed them in how to provide their gifts safely. In its first year, Hands of Hope touched more than 10,000 people in 7 cities, and each office had a small plaque that simply stated, "Inspired by Micah." Victoria, she walks now, not only in her garden, but throughout the world, grudgingly, slowly, her step a testament not to weakness, but to triumph. She's not the same woman she was prior to the crash. She's better, quieter, softer, but stronger where it matters. The press eventually lost interest, the headlines dissipated, but the tale never truly perished, because occasionally someone would call and tell Micah's story: a shelter in Detroit, a hospital waiting room in Atlanta, a refugee camp in El Paso, never with a camera, never for long, just long enough to hold a hand, press a palm, whisper a song, and then disappear. Victoria still leaves a plate of food beside her gate every night. Some nights it's gone by morning, others untouched at a bar, but she continues to do so. Since she knows, somewhere out there, he's still reminding the world of what he reminded her. Sometimes the poorest among us carry the richest gifts. Occasionally, the aid we require does not arrive as we anticipate. It does not wear a lab coat or bear a badge. It may arrive barefoot, carrying nothing but empathy and a gentle sort of insight. We have all experienced times when we have felt shattered or overlooked, when the world has seemed to leave us behind, yet mending doesn't always start with a pill. In some cases, it starts with someone merely beholding us, without criticism. This tale reminds us that true strength does not always take the form of a loud voice. It's in compassion, in connection, in the small, big-hearted ways we support one another. One word, one touch, one gesture of kindness at a time. Perhaps, just perhaps, the most precious gift we can offer is to believe in someone who still believes in us.